Dr. Richard Davidson, Philosophy Worth Dying For, and Ellen G. White.
We want to look more closely at what David wanted to experience at the sanctuary. We've talked about the Adventist pioneers and their experience with the sanctuary, and we'll say more about that tomorrow. But let's follow David's single-minded quest. What was it that he wanted to experience in the sanctuary? Well, you may have read, if you had a course in college in philosophy, or you've read some books of the philosophers, you find that they say that there are three things worth dying for. Truth, beauty, and goodness. The philosophers call this the triple star of value. Well, you know, philosophers, secular philosophers, I don't hold much stock in trusting what they say. So they're not a very reliable authority for me. But interestingly, we do have a philosopher in the Seventh-day Adventist Church. I knew a philosopher who taught me at the seminary, short guy, bald, very retiring, quiet. You'd never know he had 3 doctoral degrees in subjects I'd never even heard of. He had a PhD in philology. He had a PhD in philosophy, and he had a PhD in theology. But he was so humble. And one day, he came to class and he said, you know, I have studied all the philosophers. I had to write my dissertation in the whole history of philosophy. But there's one philosopher that I've found that stands head and shoulders above all of them. After Jesus and the apostles. So since New Testament times. And he says, it's a little woman by the name of Ellen White. And her red books, they used to be all the red books. And he testified of how he studied all these deep philosophies, and then he went to Desire of Ages or to Steps to Christ. And they're in simple language with such deep theology, so balanced and so beautiful. And so I listen when Ellen White writes to teachers. I am a teacher. Some of you have been teachers or are still teachers. And she writes to especially teachers who are teaching the Bible. And she writes in Patriarchs and Prophets about the schools of the prophets, which she says we should have more of our schools like the schools of the prophets of the Old Testament times. She says that teachers should, quote, awaken in students the love for goodness and truth and beauty. The same 3 things the philosophers say are worth dying for. And interestingly, and not a coincidence, those are the same 3 things David wanted to find in the sanctuary.